Good evening, class, and thank you for joining me today. Have you ever had to deal with people judging you negatively? Have you ever dealt with depression or anxiety? We each have our own story to tell. Today, I would like to talk to you about why mental illness is a stigma, how we can take the steps to cope with it, how we can take and deal with stigma of mental illness within our church, and how I have my own story to tell. Let's talk about why mental illness is a stigma. It's a lack of understanding. And it's false beliefs that people have, or it's discrimination people have. Health insurance companies are not adequately covering mental illness because they don't understand it. And it's a belief of we will never succeed ourselves. And some steps on how we can cope with the stigma of it is one, don't self-doubt or shame yourself. Sometimes people with mental illness feel like they're weak for asking for help. Number two, don't isolate yourself because you're not alone if you have depression or anxiety or any other sort of mental illness. Three, speak out against it. If we speak out against it, we can bring out the stigma and let people know that it's there and that they have nothing to fear. We need to educate others and lessen their judgment against us. We could possibly bring the conversation into the church. Why mental illness is not being talked about in the church. Lifeway Research did a study on acute mental illness and Christian faith. Churches could make the stigma better or worse. Pastors aren't talking about it from the pulpit. There's only 2/3 pastors speaking about mental illness once a year or less. They don't get up and they don't realize that they don't talk about how they can relate to people with mental illness. They have created the Lifeway has created 5 action plans that they can, for pastors and other church leaders. The first one is preach it from the pulpit. Preach it on the subject of mental illness. 2 is remind the members of the church or the congregation and visitors to support a support group or that they have churches elsewhere that have support groups. Maybe your church would be willing to start one, or maybe you could start one in your church. Just have support groups for mental illness or other stigmas that you know that are out there that could be used for support groups within your church. Number 3, the more persons with mental illness can see, hear, or experience your ministry environment online, the better. Most people with anxiety won't go to church because they are too scared to sit in church the whole time. Maybe if your church had an online worship service, they could attend that. That way they would be more comfortable listening to your worship service. At least they would get the involvement in the worship service. Use the social media platform with your church to pass along mental health related links to get the information out there so that people could use those links to educate themselves more on how to on what mental illness is. Consider how your church could use online resources to promote offline connections with people of your church. Preaching pastors can use the pulpit to allow persons of the congregation to openly speak about their stories and deal with mental illness. My personal story: when I was in high school, depression hit me very, very hard. Anxiety hit me. I didn't know what to do. I would tie plastic grocery bags around my throat to see how tight I could get them before I quit breathing. My parents did not want to discuss with me. They turned the other way. I would cut my arms any way I could. It was not until I got married that I was able to find some help. I was raped when I was 17 years old. I fell further into depression. I almost got divorced twice because of my depression. In 2015 was my last time that I had tried suicide. I had tried jumping out of our car at 70 miles an hour. I asked my husband for help. I received that help, and I am on the correct medications now. And I had received this tattoo that you see in the picture, and it means more to me than anything. Today, I went over why there is stigma around mental illness, how we can cope with it, how we can put it in our churches, and my personal story. If we all work together, we can stop the stigma of mental illness and we can help those that suffer. Thank you.